Hello, welcome to the webinar on Bactrocera dorsalis of the Group 1 Fruit Flies EU Priority Pest. As you might note, we previously provided 3 webinars on the EFSA plant pest survey methodological framework and the toolkit, including the RIPEST and the OptiPest, and the first webinar of the Group 1 Fruit Flies, Tephrithidae, and Astrefa ludens. If you did not attend to the previous webinars and you would like to know more about them, the recorded presentations are available on the EFSA's YouTube channel and on the EU Academy website. This is the second webinar of a round of 4 that will take place before the summer break, and today's presentations will refer especially to the pest Bactrocera dorsalis. Lastly, for the new attendees, and as a reminder, since the microphones are mute, the Q&A chat is enabled for you to ask any questions that may come up while the experts are presenting. But remember that you cannot speak, it's just listening mode. So before we start, I would like to give you some housekeeping rules. First of all, you are automatically connected to the audio broadcast, one-way audio, just listening mode. As I said, you cannot speak. The event is in English, and questions should be remain unanswered, and you can the questions that you are not able to be answered while the webinar, they will be submit by email. The questions should be also submitted in English via the Q&A chat that is available during the presentation. And this event is being recorded, and the recordings will be published on the EFSA's official YouTube channel and in the EU Academy. You will send all the information after the webinar. After the event, attendees will be requested to evaluate the EFSA's event filling out the Zoom survey. This is as you are seeing in the screen, this is the agenda for today. So now we are in the introduction, and then we will give the word to the experts that we have today to explain the Bactrocera dorsalis. Today we have Stephen Parnell, and we also have Georgia Papadegeorgiou. After the presentations, we will have a short quiz. Don't worry, it's not an exam, it's just for us to know if you understood the presentations. And then we will be ending the webinar by 11 o'clock. So today, well, I'm Jose Ovejas. I'm the moderator of this webinar, and today with us we have Stephen Parnell. He's from the EFSA Pest Survey Methods Working Group and Plant Disease, and he's an epidemiologist from the University of Warwick. And we also have with us Georgia Papadegeorgiou. She's a PhD student at the University of Thessaly. As I said, we're now going to the first poll. So you need to get your device, your phone, or even the website. And we would like all you to participate in the poll to see who is in the room. Please proceed to search www.menti.com with your mobile phone or laptop. And to participate, you can either use the QR code or enter the code that will be displayed on the screen in a few seconds. As you can see now in the slide, in the upper side, you have the code. It is 38309153. And then you have to start answering who is in the room, where are you coming from, if the National Plant Protection Organization, and other sectors. I see some of you are already participating. I like to give you some minutes because for some of you this might be new, so okay, so at the moment almost 60 people already answered. We have most of the participants today are from the National Plant Protections Organization. Some of them are central level or regional level. We also have seven, at the moment, eight support laboratory diagnostics, 10 representatives from the academy or researcher. I see like 90 people answer already, more, almost 100 now. That's just for us to know who is in the room participating in this webinar. Is this good for you to learn how to use this Mentimeter, as I said, because we will display another one at the end of the presentations just to test and to see if you have understood the presentation that Stephen and Georgia have for us today. Well, so I think we're gonna continue now on the presentation. So before I give the floor to Stephen and Georgia, I would like you to see a short video.
This initiative provides technical and scientific support on plant pest surveillance for improving crisis preparedness in plant health. The European Food Safety Authority is the reference body for risk assessment of food and feed in the European Union, and its work covers the entire food chain, from field to fork. The target audience of this initiative is both in the 27 European member states and the third countries. The inspection services of national, regional, or local authorities competent for the planning and execution of the pest surveillance, the services that support the inspection with laboratory diagnostics, the risk managers that are involved in decisions related to the planning of surveillance activities, and manage the contingency plans for crisis preparedness in case of outbreaks of regulated pests. 3 webinars have already been provided. Webinar 1 on the Plant Pest Survey Methodological Framework, Webinar 2 on the Pest Survey Toolkit, RIPEST, Webinar 3 on the Multi-Pest Survey Optimization, OptiPest. The recordings are available in the EFSA official YouTube channel and in the EU Academy platform. Starting from March 2025, we are providing specific webinars for the preparation and design of detection surveys for the 20 EU priority pests that are listed in the annex of the Commission Delegated Regulation 1702 of 2019, and a specific e-learning course that will provide the participant with an overview of the methodology for preparing, designing, implementing, and reporting of surveys of Union quarantine pests using the tools developed by EFSA. The e-learning course will be available online, and individual modules won't require the user's attention for more than 30 minutes. The course will be interactive and consider a good balance between theory and practical exercises, as well as a final certificate of attendance at the finalization of all modules. After participation, any attendant will be able to prepare, design, execute, and conclude the detection, delimiting and buffer zone surveys using the methodological framework and tools developed by EFSA. Send your application or contact us to receive more information to
Well, thank you, everyone. Now it's the time for me to give the floor to the experts we have today. So, Stephen Parnell, Georgia Papageorgiou, the floor is yours.
Okay, good morning to everyone, and thank you for attending today's webinar. Today's presentation provides an overview on the biology and Stephen, can you, okay, on the biology and the distribution of Bactrocera dorsalis. Actually, we will explore the EFSA methodological framework for survey design and its applications to Bactrocera dorsalis. And we will focus on some key components such as epidemiological and inspection units, detection methods, risk factors, and design prevalence. Also, by the end of the webinar, we will demonstrate the use of repest for assessing the presence and the distribution of Bactrocera dorsalis, highlighting its practical application in pest surveillance. So, Bactrocera dorsalis is also commonly known as the oriental fruit fly, and it is a highly invasive tephritid species known for its significant impact on fruit production. It is a relatively medium-sized fly with distinctive wing patterns and also a characteristic scutellum. As you can see, there are several synonyms, and also Bactrocera dorsalis is a species within a species complex, and though there are some uncertainties regarding its taxonomy. Here we have some information regarding the biology and the origin of Bactrocera dorsalis. And Bactrocera dorsalis is a tropical multivoltine species, and that means that it can complete multiple generations per year, and it overwinters at the adult stage. The species has been introduced into various regions of Oceania and has successfully eradicated or been established. Due to its significant impact on fruit production, it is classified as a Union Quarantine pest, and it's also listed in EU priority pests. Similar to other fruit flies of tropical origin, females oviposit their eggs in clusters, which in ripe or ripening fruits, which hatch in few days, and then we have maggots that feed into the fruit flesh before dropping to the ground to pupate. So, Bactrocera dorsalis is a highly polyphagous pest that can infest numerous plant species of a wide range of different botanical families. And the pest infests mainly tropical and subtropical fruits in areas where it thrives. And as regards Europe, the main hosts targeted for surveillance should be citrus, stone pome fruits, especially apricots, peaches, and pears, and some tropical species such as mango and avocado.
So, Georgia, can I just ask so the last webinar was on Anastropha ludens, another fruit fly. So how does the host range differ to that fruit fly?
Okay. Actually, Bactrocera dorsalis has a much broader host range than Anastropha ludens, and it can infest over 300 species. In contrast, Anastropha ludens from the previous webinar targets mainly citrus and some other species, but with a more restricted host range, let's say.
Okay, so which hosts would you target for surveillance mainly then?
Actually, mainly citrus and some stone fruits, but mainly citrus in Europe.
Okay.
So, regarding the economic importance, because Bactrocera dorsalis infests a wide range of commercially important fruits and vegetables, many countries impose strict phytosanitary regulations against Bactrocera dorsalis, and this all leads to trade bans or costly quarantine treatments for exported produce. Infestations can result in rejected shipments or even worse economic losses for growers and increased regulatory costs. Control strategies such as trapping or bait sprays or SIT and several other chemical treatments require substantial investment, and eradication programs in newly invaded regions are particularly costly and often challenging. Here we have some information regarding the life history traits for each developmental stage of Bactrocera dorsalis, and as you can see, each stage is temperature dependent. So first we have the eggs, which hatch in few days, And then we have larvae, which last from 1 week to over 3 weeks. Then we have pupa states, which last from 1 week to over a month. And likewise, we have the lifespan of females and males. And as you can see from this table, the lifespan is quite similar between the two sexes, and it lasts from 1 month to over several months. Also, we have some information regarding the reproduction of females. And as you can see, females can oviposit from few hundreds to more than 1,000 eggs in their lifetime.
Okay. And this and other information on the pest, is there a EFSA pest survey card where people can
Yes,
find this? Okay.
yes, of course. For Bactrocera dorsalis, there is available a pest survey card online, and also there is a pest report on this with all this information. Here we have the current geographic distribution of Bactrocera dorsalis as it comes from app online. And as you can see, Bactrocera dorsalis is endemic to southern Asia and has successfully spread in at least 65 countries, including parts of America and Oceania and most of continental Africa. And in Europe, Bactrocera dorsalis is frequently intercepted as larvae inside imported fruits. And recently, adults have been trapped in France, Italy, and Austria.
So the global distribution looks very different to Anastropha ludens. If I remember well, that was in Central America. So why is that?
Actually, Bactrocera dorsalis is quite aggressive species, Stephen. And when we say aggressive, we mean that it's highly invasive species. It has wider host range, as we said before, higher ecological adaptability, and greater spread capacity, and its reproduction cycle is more quicker than that in Anastropha ludens.
Okay. And the overwintering, so it can overwinter in Europe, or?
Yeah, it can overwinter at the adult stage, and we will see all this information regarding the bioclimatic suitability. So we can move to the next slide. So here we have the information on the bioclimatic suitability, and because, as you said, it can overwinter at the adult stage, it is believed that it will be able to cope with these warm conditions in southern parts in EU. So climate change scenarios predict that the potential areas of distribution will be expanded in areas such as in Spain, Portugal, Italy, Croatia, Slovenia, Greece, and Cyprus. Here we have the information regarding the spread capacity of Bactrocera dorsalis, and as you can see, Bactrocera dorsalis is quite a strong flyer, and EFSA estimated that the maximum distance that can be covered by Bactrocera dorsalis in 1 year is 10 kilometers. And this scenario considers 2 to 3 generations per year, with an average distance to be covered at 3 to 4 kilometers per year. Here, what I want to point out is that this spread covers every situation that the pest can establish.
Okay, great. Thank you. So there's different types of surveys that we could conduct for the pest, but as it's not present in the EU, a detection survey would be the most appropriate in this case. So we would go for a detection survey. What I'm going to do is go through some of the different steps and the kind of ingredients that we would need in order to use the EFSA methodological framework to design a detection survey. Now, if anyone attended the Anastropha ludens webinar, you may, some of these slides, they're general, so they're the same, but hopefully the revision is good. So there's two reasons why we would want to use a methodological framework. The first is so that our surveys can be statistically sound. So what I mean by this is that we can't survey everything. We can only survey the sort of tip of the iceberg of our population. We can't access all host plants. We can only access some of them. So if we survey the tip of the iceberg, so that part of that host population, and we find that it's not pest free, what can we say about the rest of the population that we haven't been able to observe? And that's where we need statistics, so they help us to answer that question.
Stephen,
And
can I ask something
yes, of course.
before moving? So if we survey 10% of an area in citrus orchard being 100,000 hectares, and we found no pest, what we can conclude on the likelihood of the pest being unsurveyed in the rest area?
Well, this is exactly what we can answer with the framework. So 10% is quite a lot. So that would maybe give you quite high confidence that the rest of the population is pest free. But it depends on other factors. It depend that we'll introduce today. So it depends, for example, on how sensitive your detection methods are, and so on. But yeah, 10% is quite a lot. But it would depend on these other factors that we can kind of like introduce, and the RIPEST tool allows us to answer. Um, but what helps with that further is the sort of the risk-based element of the framework. So if we have information on where and when the pest might occur, we can use that to add extra confidence in the survey and essentially to reduce the sample size that is required. So we have these two elements. Um, the first thing we need to do is to structure our population. So we have these different levels. At the highest level, we have the survey area. Now that's usually that would be our member state or part of a member state. And then within that, we have our epidemiological units. And then within our epidemiological units, we might be able to define different risk factors that tell us where the pest might be more likely to occur. And then our lowest level is our inspection unit, and that's the smallest level that we look at, and it's where we apply our detection methods. So the survey area, I think
Stephen,
it's
sorry for interrupting. Can you ask you something? Can you explain in the previous slide how incorporating risk factors into the survey design can lead to a reduction in sample size?
Yeah, of course. So essentially, because it tells us if we have some information on where the pest is more likely to occur, essentially it kind of shrinks our population. Now, if a pest is very likely to occur in one area, or one particular area, so it might be, for example, around an entry point, then if it is there, it will be at high prevalence. So actually, we don't need that many samples to kind of confirm whether it's present or not. So it makes sense in a way because the more information we have about the pest and where and when it might occur, the more efficient our survey can be, and the lower the sample size compared to if we had less information.
Okay.
But yeah, the first level that I'm going to describe is the epidemiological unit. So this is essentially a kind of homogeneous area where the interactions between the pest, the host plants, the environment, so the abiotic, biotic factors would result in the same epidemiology. So that's the sort of first choice we have to make for the pest. So what would it be in this case, Georgia?
Actually, for Bactrocera dorsalis, the epidemiological unit should be mainly citrus, similar with Anastrefa ludens situation, and also some stone and palm fruits orchards in the southern Europe, but mainly citrus.
So citrus orchards. So why would that be the case?
Actually, citrus are chosen as an epidemiological unit because they are highly susceptible, economically important, and all these orchards are well defined. So these characteristics makes them ideal for consistent monitoring, infestation assessment, and this implementation of control measures.
Great. Um, and then the next level that I'm going to introduce is the inspection unit. So this is the sort of smallest unit that we have, and it's the unit at which the detection method is applied. Um, So it can be different things depending on the pest and depending on the detection methods that you're using. It can be different things I'll talk about in a moment, but essentially the important thing is it defines the size of the target population. So when we talk about the sample size or the size of the target population, what we mean is how many inspection units did you look at, or how many inspection units are there in the total population. So again, in general, this can vary for different pests. So it could be an individual plant or an individual tree. It could be the fruit on the tree. It could be in the case of vectors, or in the case of herbivorous insect pests, it could be the area covered by a trap. Or in some cases, it might even be the pest directly. So for this fruit fly, what would be might we consider?
Actually, in this part of the survey, we will focus on two key components. One is the fruit sampling, and the second is trapping. And if we begin with this fruit sampling, this involves selecting a single tree, for example, a citrus tree, that bears ripe or ripening fruits. And also we have to consider to sample fruits that are recently fallen. And as regarding the trapping, for Bactrocera dorsalis, we have a variety of trapping systems. And in contrast to Anastropha ludens, for Bactrocera dorsalis, we have a sex-specific attractant, and this is methylgenol. And we have several common traps that are used for the detection, and these are McPhail traps, Linfield, Steiner, Jackson, and or yellow sticky traps. Also, one important thing for the trap is the placement, and we recommend to place the traps on the eastern side of the trees and in shaded areas.
Okay. That's quite specific. So why is that trap placement important?
Actually, we recommend placing them in the eastern side in order to catch, let's say, this early morning activity of the insects, and in shaded areas in order to prevent the desiccation of the lures from the traps. So our traps will be active for a longer time in our orchard.
Okay.
Yeah, what about this method sensitivity, Stephen?
Yeah, so well, this is okay. So there are some different detection methods that you might apply at that inspection unit. So traps, for example. But when we apply our detection methods, what we need to know is their sensitivity. So that is the probability to correctly identify the pest as being present if it is present in the inspection unit. So we need to know that at the inspection unit scale. Now, it depends on two main components. So it's the sampling effectiveness and also the diagnostic sensitivity. Now, diagnostic sensitivity in the lab is something that often gets quantified, but it's a little rarer for sampling effectiveness to get quantified. But it's really important because we need to know at that inspection unit scale what is our probability of correctly identifying or detecting the pest if it's there. So the sampling effectiveness is the probability to collect an infested sample from the inspection unit if the pest is present there based on whatever sampling protocol you have adopted. And then the diagnostic sensitivities, then you take that sample to the lab and you might use various tests to detect it within the sample, and it's the probability that that diagnostic approach would detect the pest in the sample if it's there. So we need to look at both of these things at the inspection unit scale to define our method sensitivity.
Stephen, can I ask something? So, if I understood well, both sampling effectiveness and diagnostic sensitivity play a crucial role in the accuracy of survey results. But how do you balance these two factors when designing a survey, especially considering that increasing sensitivity in one stage, for example, in the sampling effectiveness, might lead to trades off in the diagnostic performance or resource expenditure at other stages?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's difficult. I mean, if your resources are coming from the same pot, then you have to keep an eye on, I think, this overall method sensitivity. So it's no use having a very, very sensitive diagnostic if the sampling effectiveness or the methods that are being applied there mean that the sampling effectiveness is very low, so that you're not getting the pest is not going to have a chance of being sent to the laboratory. So it's a sort of balance, I think, between these sort of two things. But yeah, that's a good question.
Okay, so as we said earlier, we have to consider in our sampling ripe or ripening fruits that are symptomatic and recently fallen. Here in the image, you can see these symptoms from Bactrocera dorsalis, and EFSA estimated that the sampling effectiveness is 20%, and that means that in 1 out of 5 trials, the pest will be detected with fruit sampling. And by targeting the right fruit at the right time, you can understand that we can increase our chances for the early detection and the accurate pest monitoring. And also we have the trapping. And for the trapping, as we said before, for Bactrocera dorsalis, we have a sex-specific attractant. And EFSA estimated that the sampling effectiveness will be 50%. And that means that 1 out of 2 traps will be able to detect the fly in a radius of 100 meters from the trapping spot.
Okay, so your inspection unit in that case would be the area covered by the trap, so the 100 meters.
Yeah.
Um, but what else does it assume? Because it might depend on how often you check the traps, or so what is this number? What else is this number based on?
Yes, actually, you are right. It has to do with the inspection. So, in this scenario, we consider that we have one McPhail trap baited with methylenol, and we inspect at least once per week.
Okay, so if someone wanted to check less frequently than that because of logistics or something, they would have to adapt this number to reflect that.
Yes, yes, absolutely, yes.
Okay, the next level I want to introduce is then the risk factors. So these are the any kind of biotic or abiotic factor that increases the probability of the pest being present in an area. And as we talked about before, this is a very useful thing because if we have this information, it allows us to reduce the sample size needed to achieve the same kind of confidence that we have in the survey. A good way to think about risk factors is in these different concepts. So underneath a risk factor, there must be a risk activity. So that is the activity that is going on that is causing that increase in the pest occurring. Um, and then we have to think about, well, where is that risk activity actually taking place? So we can come up with our risk locations, and there might be lots of these, and you would need to map these in your member state and understand what area they were was around them, and that's the risk areas. So if we have a risk location, for example, it could be an entry point. It's not just that entry point that we would want to consider, but also the area around it in some circumstances, because the pest could escape and disperse around where it has been introduced. And that's the risk areas. So these are sort of useful concepts that we use to think about risk factors. So if we're going to use risk factors in the survey design, we have to think about maybe the different levels associated with them. So it could be that, again, if risk factor is an entry point, that the area closest to that entry point is high risk, and then as you get further away, it becomes medium risk. We have to think about what proportion of the population is covered by that risk area. So if there was just one entry point and a small area around it, it would be quite a small area. But it could be that you have many entry points, potential entry points with a large area around them. And then finally, it's important that we quantify what we call the relative risk. So that tells us about, well, how risky is each risk level, and we need that to incorporate this into the methodological framework so that we can do the statistics. So the relative risk tells us about the risk of the pest being present in one risk group compared to like the rest of the population, basically the baseline. So we use it to describe the difference in risk between different parts of the target population, but we've got to quantify it. So the risk factors for this pest, Georgia?
Yeah, actually, as we mentioned before, Stephen, we begin with these risk activities, which are linked to risk locations, and this in turn define the broader risk areas with a relative risk of high, medium, or low. So, in case of Bactrocera dorsalis, the import of fruits from countries is considered to be a risk activity. And risk location is all these entry points and packing and sorting stations. And these locations become, let's say, as key risk locations. And when clustered or spread within a region, they can define a high risk area for the pest's distribution and establishment. But we need to quantify it, this relative risk, right?
Yeah, so you've got here sort of high and medium, but we need to really say how, if we're going to incorporate in the framework, we really need to attach numbers to that. So just to give a kind of example, so again, relative risk is the risk of the pest being present in one group relative to another. So how much riskier, how much more likely is it to occur in the risk level compared to the rest of the population. So just to kind of give a simple example, you could quantify this from data if you had data. So this just gives an idea of how to think about it. So imagine that 12 incursions of a pest had been, intercepted. Nine had occurred around a risk location and three of them just in the rest of the population. So that would tell us that the risk level there, or the relative risk of that risk factor, would be 3 because it was 3 times more likely to occur there than it is in the rest of the population. So yeah, for the risk factors that you've identified for the pest, how can we think about that?
Actually, when we consider an entry point, such as a packing or sorting station, as we said before, we can specify two risk areas, one of a high and one with a medium relative risk. The high risk area would be from 0 to 5 kilometers, and the medium risk area from 5 to 10 kilometers. And we choose this radius because the pest can spread up to 10 kilometers per year. So the EFSA estimated that the relative risk for this high risk area from 0 to 5 kilometers will be 2.4 times higher than in the baseline. And for the medium risk area, we have 1.85 more chances to find the pest than in the baseline.
Okay.
So now we have everything in order to put them in the repest.
Yes, yeah, I think so. So we've defined all of the different levels that we have in our population and the quantities and the numbers that we need for that. So we can bring that all together. Now we'll not use like we did last time with Anastrophe ludens. We'll not use a particular member state. So we have in the EFSA working group invented a country called Surveyland that we can use just as a purpose to sort of demonstrate the approaches. So here it is. It is in the middle of the Indian Ocean, and here is a table of all of our parameters, all of our values that we have gathered throughout the webinar so far. So our inspection unit is the area covered by a single trap, which is just over 3 hectares in area. I'm going to say that we've got around 9,500 of these in our target population. So it's around 30,000 hectares of the host in Surveyland. We'll just focus on traps for now, just to keep the example simple. And you said that it has a sampling effectiveness. Traps have a sampling effectiveness, I think, of 50%. Diagnostic sensitivity, I think we can assume it's quite high. We didn't mention this, but is 95%. I hope is okay. And then you mentioned just then the risk levels that we have. So these two different bands around the entry point, and the first is from 0 to 5 kilometers from the risk location, and that has a relative risk of 2.4. So it's 2.4 more times likely to occur there compared to the baseline. And then that second outer band is between 5 and 10 kilometers from the risk location, and it has a relative risk of 1.85. So it's 1.85 times more likely to occur there than in the baseline population. And then, just for sake of argument, I'm going to say that we had data that suggested that, well, 5% of the target population is covered by that risk level 3 and 6%. But you would need to look at the maps, and you would need to calculate for your member state how much of your total area is covered by these different risks, different risk levels. What we haven't done so far is the design prevalence. So we have to set this. So this is a risk manager decision, but I can explain a little bit about what it means. It gives us the kind of the evidence of freedom, in the strength of the evidence of freedom in our survey. So the design prevalence is also defined in ISPM 31. It's the maximum prevalence that the pest could have reached but still go undetected. So as I said right at the start of the webinar, we can't survey everything. So we can never say that it's 100%, it's definitely not present, it's zero, unless we looked at absolutely everything. So instead, what we can say, well, there's this maximum prevalence that it could have reached and still go undetected. Now, in general, the lower the design prevalence, the more inspection units you would need to look at to achieve that. So the graph here, we have sample size in terms of the number of inspection units looked at. This is just an example. And then on the y-axis, we have the confidence level that would achieve. So imagine that your design prevalence was quite low, so 0.5%. If you looked at 200 inspection units, you would only have 50% confidence that the pest is really free. Whereas if your design prevalence was higher, then it's not as strong evidence, but you can achieve a higher confidence in that higher level. So it's sorry,
Can,
go on, sorry.
can I ask something?
Yes.
So can we elaborate on how a risk manager determines the maximum prevalence of a pest that can go undetected in the survey and still be eradicable?
Yeah, so there's a useful way to think about the design prevalence is you don't want to set it too, if you set it really, really low, then it will take a lot of resources. But if you set it high, then you don't have as strong evidence that the pest is really free. So it's a bit of a balance. So a good way to think about it is, well, what prevalence could it have reached and still be eradicated? And this depends that what that is will vary from pest to pest, depending on how strong a disperser the pest is, and also how good the control methods we have to sort of achieve eradication. So for this pest, what might that look like?
Actually, once Bactrocera dorsalis has been detected and the infested area has been delimited, immediate action is crucial. So the maximum radius within which an infestation can realistically be managed and eradicated is estimated by EFSA to be in 1 kilometer. And this eradication protocol involves several methods such as different chemical treatments, bait application, destruction of roots, or sterile insect techniques. And this coordinated approach actually ensures both the suppression of the current population, but also prevents further spread, increasing the likelihood of successful eradication.
Okay, great. So now we have everything now that we have the design prevalence. So what we can do is we can take that 1 kilometer radius, we can look at what that represents in terms of our the total area um, in the population, and in this case it would work out as a design prevalence of about 1% of the total population. So we can use that as our design prevalence. So what I'll do now is I'll just very quickly take all these numbers and just give a quick demonstration of how we can then use RIPEST in a sort of simple example. So hopefully you can still see my screen. I'm just going to minimize this. Okay. Okay, so this is what RIPEST looks like. Now we're designing a detection survey, so we can click on that. Um, They will ask you for the goal of the survey, and I'm going to say it's to comply with regulatory requirements. The target pest is here. The status is absent. I'm going to say that we haven't conducted a survey for the pest in the past. And then we're going to use, as I mentioned before, this example of Surveyland. So here it is. In the middle of the Indian Ocean. And we can, within RIPEST, select the different epidemiological units or the different NUTS levels, rather. In Surveyland, I'm going to conduct a survey in the whole territory. And Georgia, you showed that different hosts were relevant. It's quite a polyphagous pest, but I'm going to say we're going to focus just on citrus and peach in this example here, just to keep it simple. So we first of all have to define for both citrus and peach these different factors, so the epidemiological units, and just I'll say we just have one. We're going to conduct a risk-based survey, which depends on the spread capacity, because as we saw, we have this area around the entry points that are important in terms of the different risk levels. Then we have our traps that we're going to use, and they have a sampling effectiveness of 50%, and we can enter that here. And then we'll be using some molecular testing to identify the pest, and we're going to say that that has a diagnostic sensitivity of 95%. So if we continue, it's missed the important risk factors definition. Let's just go there. So I've defined my risk factors here. I've said they depend on the spread capacity. And then let's look at that. For peach, then I would also do the same. I can define my risk factors and my different detection methods that I'm using here. And then I move on to the next part in the design phase. And we can set here the overall confidence level. So we're going to set that at 95%. And we discussed that the design prevalence, so this prevalence that would be eradicable, is about 1%. And then we have to define our risk factors or our different risk levels. So we've said that this high one was the area 0 to 5 kilometers around the entry point, had a relative risk of 2.4. For the medium one, 1.85. And then we can define the same for peach. So then we can simulate this, and if we click simulate, then it tells us the different sample sizes that we need to achieve in the different risk levels. So in our high risk level, we need to look at 49 inspection units, 61 in the median, and 118 elsewhere. It asks us if we want to reallocate the sampling units, but the epidemiological units, but we can say no there, and then we're ready to finish the survey. So then you would go and you would conduct the survey, so you know how many inspection units in these different risk areas you need to achieve, and you can come back and then enter your results. And then we're ready to make our conclusion. So if you didn't find anything, then the conclusion would be that the pest is absent with a certain confidence level at that design prevalence. It also gives you an opportunity. So let's say that you weren't able to achieve the exactly 49 in the high risk area, maybe you only achieved 40, you can enter the numbers that you were able to achieve, and it will give you the updated confidence level. And we can also download the reports, so in different formats. So either in this PDF format, and it gives you a nice summary of everything that you've entered, or in the official reporting format in an Excel document as well. And then we can finish the survey, and it gives us, when we've entered our information, it gives us our conclusion. So we didn't find it, and the conclusion is that the survey area is free from the pest with I've gone back and forward too much there with my connection, but it was a 95% confidence level and a design prevalence of 1%. And then we're finished. So I'll pass back to you, Jose.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Georgia. Thank you very much, Stephen, for your presentations. Before we move on, I want to remind you all that this is a just listening mode webinar. So as some of you already did, you can submit your questions by the Q&A chat or via email after this webinar. Okay, so now we're gonna move on to the second poll. Okay, it's just a small quiz. It's not a test. Don't worry, it's not an exam. We just want to know if you understood what Stephen and Georgia just explained us. So we are gonna use again the Mentimeter. I hope you have your device nearby. And now you will see appearing in your screen the Mentimeter application. Okay, so you can either use www.menti.com or use the application, the app Menti. As you can see in the upper side of the slide, you have the code. It is 31750621. So now we're gonna proceed to the quiz to see if you understood the presentation. Let's go for the first question. If you survey only adult flies using traps and the pest has a long immature states and short adult lifespan, what is the most likely risk? You have four options. You may overestimate the populations. You may detect the pest too early. You may underestimate or miss the population, or no risk. It is reliable method. I see some of you are already answering. Don't worry, it's not an exam, just a quiz. And Stephen and Georgia will give us the correct answer after this small quiz. I give you one more minute to see if you answer. And while some of you maybe started the webinar after the explanation of the menti.com, I am gonna just remind it is www.menti.com, and you have to join with the use code that you have on the upper side of the slide. Today we almost had 300 participants, and as I see in the Mentimeter, now it's like almost half of, well, almost 150 are using Mentimeter. Now you can see in the screen that most of you answer you may underestimate or miss the population. We'll see the answers afterwards with Stephen and Georgia. So I think we can move on to the second question. Okay, when surveying for Bactrocera dorsalis, what does method sensitivity refer to in terms of pest detection? And we have three options for this: is the ability to detect the pest when it is present in an inspection unit, the number of traps used in a survey, or the number of pest-free areas surveyed. Okay, I see some of you are already answering. And some of you are now getting to Mentimeter. I guess some of you are not able to use it, but I want to remind you all it's www.menti.com, and you have to put in the code that you have in the upper side of the slide, 317500621. Okay, so as I see here, most of you answered the first option, the ability to detect the pest when it is present in an inspection unit. We'll see the answer later on with Stephen and Georgia. So let's move on to the third question. Which of the following regions is considered climatically suitable for the establishment of Bactrocera dorsalis in Europe? We have four options. First, Sweden, Finland, and Estonia. Then we have France, Germany, and Belgium. The other option is Spain, Italy, Greece, and Cyprus. And the last option is Ireland, Denmark, and the Netherlands. I see all of you are really fast in this one. Let's see if you answer the correct one after with Stephen and Georgia. Okay, and most of you answer Spain, Italy, Greece, and Cyprus. Let's see if you... Okay, let's continue to the fourth question of the quiz. So, for the first question, which of the following pieces of information is essential for incorporating a risk factor into a risk-based sampling design? Option A, the historical spread rate of the pest in neighboring countries. Option B, the preferred host plant of the pest. Option C, the levels of the risk factor, the proportion of the population at each level, and the relative risk associated with each level. And the fourth option, the total number of surveyors available for sampling. I see so many people are joining now to Mentimeter. I'm sorry if you weren't able to do it before, but it's just a small quiz just to see if you understood the presentation. Okay, so already 140 people answer. Okay, so as I see, most of you answered the third option. We will find the correct answer after with Stephen and Georgia. So should we move to the fifth question? Oh, there was just 4 questions for this quiz, sorry. So we have here the results. If you want to give a feedback, is Georgia or Stephen?
Georgia, maybe you could take the first one on the traps.
Yeah, for the first question, the correct answer is C. And this is because a large proportion of the population may be undetectable at the time of the trapping. So this highlights the value of combining all this demographic knowledge with the survey design.
Okay, yeah, and then for question two is when surveying for Bactrocera dorsalis, what does method sensitivity refer to? Yes, it's I think most people got this one, this ability to detect or the probability to detect a pest when it's present in an inspection unit. And yeah, it has two components, the sampling effectiveness and the diagnostic sensitivity.
Then for question 3, with the regions that are suitable for Bactrocera dorsalis establishment, the correct answer is also C. And this because, as we said in our presentation, it can overwinter at the adult stage. So in these regions, it will be able to cope with these warmer winters.
Yes, I think everyone got that one. And then the final one, which of the following pieces of information is essential for incorporating a risk factor into a risk-based design? And we showed the different sort of ingredients that you need, and it of course is the levels of the risk factor, the proportion of the population that's covered by it, and then this quantity, the relative risk associated with each level. Okay, thank you everyone for giving that a go.
So
Thank you.
thank you very much, Georgia. Thank you very much, Stephen, for your presentations. Thank you all for attending. Well, in case we did not manage to answer all your questions, you will find them published on the EU Academy. Please note that similar questions will be grouped in one answer where possible. So the recordings of today's webinar will be able on EFSA's official YouTube channel and in the UE Academy with subtitles in 4 different languages: English, Spanish, French, and Arabic. And for you to know, this is the second webinar of a group of 4. So for the next webinars, we have Bactrocera sonata on the 27th, May 27th. Then we will have Ragoletis pomonella on June 30th. And we will have, after the break, the summer break, we'll have a group 2 webinars. It will be Anoplophora kinesis September 18th, Anoplophora glabripernis September 30th, and Aromia bungi October 27th. Please take a few minutes. Thank you everyone for attending our event, and please take a few minutes to scan the QR code on the right side of the slide and fill in the evaluation survey. If you are unable to scan the QR code, after this event, you will receive a link to access the Microsoft survey form. And we hope your feedback, because it's essential for us to improve our future events. I hope you had a good webinar with us today. Thank you everyone for attending. We almost had 300 people today. And thank you once again, Stephen and Georgia, for your presentations. We have now reached the end of the session. I hope you all have learned about this pest and now are well informed about it. As I mentioned in the previous slide, the next webinar is going to be scheduled for May 27th. I hope you all can attend, and I wish you all a great rest of the day. Thank you everyone for attending today.